Story 1. The Locked Basement. It was the summer after my sophomore year of college when my cousin invited me up north to stay at his family's old cabin. He said it would be the perfect getaway, fishing, bonfires, and no responsibilities. At first, I thought it sounded like heaven, but looking back now, I wish I'd never gone. The drive itself felt endless. The farther we went, the less civilization we saw. First, the towns disappeared. Then, the gas stations. Then, even the power lines seemed to vanish. All that was left was a long dirt road surrounded by miles of dark pine trees that blotted out the sunlight. When we finally pulled into the clearing, I got my first look at the cabin. It was 2 stories tall, built from old timber that looked almost black in some places. The roof sagged slightly in the middle, and the windows were narrow, like watchful eyes staring out into the forest. Something about it immediately made my stomach tighten. I couldn't put my finger on why. Maybe it was the silence. No wind, no birds, no sound of water from the lake behind it. Just stillness, like the woods were holding their breath. Inside, the air was heavy, damp. It smelled like wet wood and something else, something metallic, like rust or old blood. The living room was dim, even in the afternoon sun, with only 2 small windows letting in light. And right there, in the center of the living room floor, was a door. Not a trap door tucked away in a corner. A thick, square door of dark wood, bolted shut with a heavy, rusted padlock. I stopped in my tracks and pointed. "What's that?" My cousin barely glanced at it. "Basement. We don't go down there." "Why not?" "Dad keeps it locked." That was it. No explanation, no details. The way he said it made me feel like I wasn't supposed to ask more, so I dropped it. But that door stayed in my mind. Even when we unpacked and started the fire outside, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would you lock a basement in the middle of nowhere? That night, after a couple of beers, my cousin passed out in his chair by the fire. I went back inside to grab another drink. The cabin was dark, lit only by the moonlight coming through the window. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was my imagination. A faint sound beneath my feet. Tap, 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 like someone gently knocking on wood. I froze, my eyes locked on the basement door. The padlock glinted faintly in the moonlight. The tapping continued, steady, deliberate. My heart hammered. I tried to convince myself it was pipes, or maybe an animal scratching around, but then it stopped. And in that silence, I heard something else, a whisper, low, muffled, like someone speaking through clenched teeth right beneath the floor. I couldn't make out the words, but it was urgent, repeated, almost like it wanted me to understand. My throat went dry. "Okay." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the couch, and bolted outside. "Okay." I shook my cousin awake. "Someone's in the basement," I hissed. He looked at me, bleary-eyed. At first, annoyed, then slowly serious. "I told you," he said quietly. "Don't worry about the basement. Just leave it alone." But his voice trembled. And that terrified me more than anything. Over the next few days, I tried to ignore it. We went fishing, we swam in the lake, we grilled hot dogs by the fire. But every night, when the cabin got quiet, the noises started again. At first, it was just the tapping. Then dragging sounds, like heavy furniture being pulled across a concrete floor. Sometimes it lasted minutes, sometimes hours. One night, I woke up to a sharp metallic clink. I sat up, straining my ears. It came again, the sound of the padlock rattling. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just lay there, staring at the faint outline of the basement door from across the room. Finally, it went silent. But I didn't sleep again. In the mornings, I started noticing things. The lock looked different. Not open, but shifted, like someone had been fiddling with it. Dust that used to sit untouched around the edges of the door was disturbed, brushed away like something had pushed against it from the inside. Every time I asked my cousin about it, he got angry. "Drop it," he'd snap. "Seriously? Don't bring it up again." But his hands shook when he said it. On the fourth night, I decided to test something. I set my phone to record audio and placed it near the basement door before bed. When I checked the recording in the morning, my stomach dropped. For the first few hours, there was nothing, just silence. Then, around 2:13 a.m., a sound, a voice. It was faint, distorted, but I could hear it, whispering over and over. At first, I thought it was just noise, until I realized I could make out two words, repeated in a hoarse voice. Let me, over and over. I deleted the recording immediately. I didn't want it on my phone. The final morning, when we were packing to leave, I went inside for my bag. I'll never forget what I saw. The basement door was wide open. The padlock was lying on the floor. Cold air seeped up from the darkness below, carrying that same metallic smell, stronger than ever. My skin broke out in goosebumps. I didn't go near it. I didn't look down. I grabbed my bag and ran outside. My cousin saw my face and knew. He didn't ask, and I didn't tell him. We drove away in silence, and I swore I would never set foot in that cabin again. To this day, I don't know what was in that basement. I don't know if it was a person, an animal, or something worse. But sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I swear I can still hear it. Tap, tap, cape, whispering just beneath the floor. Story 2. The Stranger in the Window. This happened last summer when a couple of friends and I rented a cabin for a long weekend getaway. We wanted something cheap and secluded, away from the noise of the city. The cabin we found online looked perfect. A cozy little wooden place by a lake, surrounded by forest. The photos showed a fire pit, a dock, even a hammock tied between two trees. It seemed like the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen. I wish I had trusted my gut when we pulled up and I saw it in person. The cabin wasn't exactly like the pictures. It was older, so the paint was peeling. The windows looked cloudy, and the wood siding had turned almost gray from age. Still, we told ourselves it had character. Inside, it smelled faintly of mildew and dust. There were cobwebs in the corners of the ceiling. But the view from the front windows, looking out at the lake, almost made up for it. There were 4 of us, me, my friend Kevin, his girlfriend Emily, and another friend named Ryan. We unpacked, cracked open some drinks, and spent the first day swimming and sitting by the fire. It felt fun, safe, exactly like we wanted. That night, though, was the first time I noticed the window. The front of the cabin had a wide rectangular window that looked out toward the trees near the lake. When the sun went down and the inside lights were on, the glass turned into a black mirror. You couldn't see out anymore, but anyone outside could see in perfectly. I remember standing in the living room, brushing my teeth, and suddenly realizing that the thought of someone standing out there, just beyond the trees, watching us while we laughed and talked inside. It gave me chills. I pulled the thin curtain shut and tried not to think about it. The second night was when things started. It was around midnight, and we were playing cards at the table. I was sitting closest to the window, my back half turned toward it. At one point, Ryan dropped a card and bent down to pick it up. When he came back up, he stopped. His eyes went past me, toward the glass. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He just stared, then shook his head quickly. "Nothing. Thought I saw something." We all laughed it off, but my skin prickled. After that, Ryan barely looked toward the window again. When it was time for bed, I couldn't help myself. I peeked through a gap in the curtain. For a second, I swear I saw a shape, a pale face, maybe, between two trees, up. But then it was gone, and I told myself it was just the moonlight. The third night is when it all escalated. We had stayed up late by the fire pit, roasting marshmallows and telling dumb ghost stories. When we finally stumbled back inside, it was close to 2 in the morning. Kevin and Emily went straight to their room. Ryan crashed on the couch. I stayed up a little longer, scrolling on my phone in the chair by the window. The curtain wasn't fully closed. A small gap was left open. That's when I saw it. A face, pressed up against the glass, inches from mine. It was a man, maybe mid-40s, with long stringy hair and sunken eyes. His skin looked pale, almost gray, and his mouth was twisted into the faintest smile. I froze. My body locked up completely. I couldn't even scream. The man didn't move. He just stared at me through the glass, unblinking. Finally, I jerked backward and yelled. Brian bolted upright on the couch. Kevin and Emily came running from their room. By the time I pointed to the window, the face was gone. We all rushed outside with flashlights, but the woods were dead silent. No footsteps, no sound of someone running away. Just stillness. Nobody slept much that night. In the morning, Kevin tried to convince me it was probably just some random guy camping nearby. Maybe he was drunk, wandered over, got curious, but I knew what I saw. That man wasn't drunk. He was deliberate. He wanted me to see him. We should have left right then, but instead, we stayed. The fourth night was the worst. We decided to keep the curtains fully closed and left the lights off early. Around midnight, I woke up to a noise, a faint tapping. At first, I thought it was a branch against the wall, but then it came again. Rhythmic, deliberate, tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the window. I held my breath, staring at the curtain. And then I saw the fabric move, just slightly. Like fingers brushing against it from the outside. I grabbed Ryan's arm. He woke instantly, eyes wide. It heard it too. We both sat there, frozen, listening. The tapping grew louder, faster, then it stopped. And a shadow fell across the curtain. Someone was standing there, right on the other side. Ryan whispered, "We need to wake them up." But before we could, a low voice came through the glass, muffled, but clear enough to understand. "I see you." I swear my blood turned to ice. We bolted into Kevin and Emily's room, shaking them awake. Kevin grabbed a kitchen knife, and the four of us locked ourselves in until morning, when we finally worked up the courage to look outside. The ground beneath the window was covered in footprints, 2 of them circling the cabin, some pressed so close to the wall they almost smeared against it. We left that morning. None of us said much on the drive home. I don't know who that man was or why he was watching us. But the worst part is knowing how long he might have been out there, blending in with the trees, waiting for us to notice. Okay, and I'll never forget his face at the window, staring straight into mine. Story 3. The crawl space. This story took place 3 summers ago when I went with my cousin Mark and a couple of friends to stay at his family's old cabin. The place had been in his family for decades, and honestly, it looked like it. The wood was weathered and gray. The roof sagged a little on one side, and the porch creaked so loudly it sounded like it could collapse under your weight. Still, there was something charming about it. It sat at the edge of a dense forest with a lake about a quarter-mile down the trail. It was the kind of place where you really felt like you were in the middle of nowhere. And that's exactly what we wanted. No neighbors, no distractions, just peace and quiet. Or so we thought. The first day went fine. We swam, grilled some food, and later sat around the fire telling stories. The air was warm, the stars were out, and it felt like the perfect summer trip. But inside the cabin, things felt different. The air was heavy, musty, like the house hadn't been opened in years. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the walls seemed thinner than they should have been. The weirdest thing, though, was the crawl space. In the hallway, near the back bedroom, there was a small wooden hatch in the floor, just big enough for a person to squeeze through. Mark told us his family never used it. It was supposed to be for storage, but it always gave him a bad feeling. The hatch didn't have a lock, just a rusty metal handle. That night, we were sitting in the living room playing a board game when we heard it. A noise, a soft, scraping sound coming from the hallway. We froze. The scraping turned into a dull thump, then another. It was coming from the crawl space. Probably an animal, Mark said quickly. Raccoons or something. But his voice sounded strained, like even he didn't believe it. We tried to brush it off, but the sound came again. A dragging noise, followed by a hollow bump. Ryan, one of the guys with us, muttered, "That doesn't sound like a raccoon." We sat in silence, listening until it finally stopped. But from then on, we couldn't stop glancing toward the hallway, toward that hatch. Around 3 a.m., I woke up thirsty. I went to the kitchen for water, trying not to step too loud on the groaning floorboards. On my way back, I passed the hallway. The hatch to the crawl space was open, just slightly, not all the way, but enough that the blackness beneath was visible. A crack, maybe 3 inches wide. My stomach dropped. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I crouched down, staring at the gap. The air coming out was damp and cold, like a basement, and then I heard it. A faint breath. Not mine, not my friends snoring in the other rooms, but a slow, steady breath coming from the darkness below. I backed away fast, my heart slamming in my chest, and shut the hatch hard. I didn't tell anyone until the morning. When I did, Mark went pale. He admitted something, Dad. Something his family never really talked about. Years ago, when his dad was a kid, he and his brother had gone down into the crawl space just to explore. It wasn't very big, just dirt walls, wooden beams, and a few old crates. But his dad swore they heard something down there. Not an animal, not the wind, but whispers. They ran out, and their parents nailed the hatch shut. Years later, someone must have removed the nails. That was the first moment I had truly thought about leaving. Stupidly, we stayed. The second night was worse. We were all asleep when a loud crash woke us up. It sounded like it came from the hallway. We all rushed out of our rooms at the same time. The hatch was wide open, and there were marks on the floor. Long, dirty streaks, like something had been dragged out of the crawl space and across the wood. They led down the hallway and disappeared into the kitchen. We stood there, frozen, staring at them. No one wanted to follow. Finally, Mark grabbed a flashlight and slowly walked into the kitchen. There was nothing, no raccoon, no animal, just silence. But the back door was unlocked. We were sure we had locked it earlier. That night, we pushed the heaviest chair we could find over the hatch, trying to block it. None of us wanted to admit we thought someone might be down there. But around 4 a.m., I woke up again, this time to a different sound. A low, creaking, wood bending under weight. I sat up, listening, and then I heard it. The sound of fingernails scratching against the wood. Slow, deliberate, coming from directly under my bed. My heart stopped. I was sleeping in the back bedroom, the one right above the crawl space. I froze in place, afraid to even breathe. The scratching went on for what felt like hours, then stopped suddenly. I didn't sleep again that night. On the last day, we decided to check the crawl space. We had to know. Armed with a flashlight and a baseball bat, Mark and I pulled open the hatch. The smell hit us first, damp, earthy, and sour, like rot. I climbed down the ladder behind him, my heart pounding in my ears. The crawl space was worse than I expected. It was damp dirt, low enough that you had to crouch. Cobwebs clung to the beams overhead, and the walls were rough and uneven. But the strangest thing was the objects. In the corner sat an old sleeping bag, flattened with age. Beside it were empty cans, a rusty lantern, and a pile of bones that looked like animal remains. And carved into the wooden beams were words. T's, dozens of words. They were scratched and crudely, over and over. Stay, stay. We shined the light deeper into the darkness, and that's when I saw it. Another hatch, smaller, hidden behind a beam. It led even deeper into a narrow tunnel. The dirt floor there had fresh prints in it, bare human footprints, leading in, leading back out, right toward the ladder we had just climbed down. I felt something cold brush the back of my neck. I spun around, shining the light everywhere, but nothing was there, just shadows. Mark was pale. His voice cracked when he said, "We need to leave, now." We scrambled out of the crawl space, slammed the hatch shut, and left the chair over it again. We packed and left that same morning. I don't know who or what was in that crawl space, but sometimes, late at night, when I think about it, I can still hear those fingernails scratching under my bed. Story 4. The Unwelcome Guest. This story happened to my friend Claire last summer at a cabin her parents had rented in the Adirondacks. She had invited me and 2 other friends, Emily and Nate, to stay with her for a week. The cabin looked beautiful in the photos. A 2-story wooden lodge with a big stone fireplace nestled deep in the trees, but in person, it felt off. The cabin sat at the very end of a long dirt road, with no other houses in sight. On the way in, we noticed the trees leaning over the road, their branches so thick they almost blocked out the sky. The cabin looked darker than the photos, its paint faded, its windows streaked with dirt. The strangest thing was the silence, not peaceful silence, oppressive. No birds, no insects, just the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. From the moment we arrived, it felt like we weren't supposed to be there. It's the first night, we were unpacking in the upstairs bedrooms when Emily froze by the window. She swore she saw someone standing at the edge of the woods. We all rushed over, but by the time we looked, no one was there, just a dark wall of trees, unmoving. We laughed it off, saying it was just her imagination. But later, when we sat by the fire downstairs, the uneasy feeling crept back. The cabin was surrounded by big glass windows. At night, they turned into mirrors. You could see your reflection perfectly, but outside, it was just black, an endless void. It felt like something could be staring in, and you'd never know. Around midnight, Nate went to the kitchen for a drink. We heard him call out, "Did one of you leave the door open?" We rushed in, and sure enough, the front door was wide open. We were positive we'd locked it. The door led straight out to the porch, which faced the forest. Beyond that, nothing but darkness. We shut it quickly and double-checked the locks. But the thought of someone walking right up to the cabin while we were sitting there, it left us all unsettled. That night, we hardly slept. The next morning, Claire found something on the porch. Footprints, bare feet. They were pressed into the dirt just off the steps, circling the porch before disappearing into the trees. They weren't ours. None of us had gone outside barefoot, and they looked fresh. We tried to come up with explanations. Maybe some local kids messing around, maybe a hiker who got lost. None of it made sense. Why would someone be out here, barefoot, circling our cabin in the middle of the night? That evening, it got worse. We were eating dinner when a loud knock echoed from the front door. It's not a polite knock, a slow, heavy pounding. We froze. No one moved. After a moment, Claire called out, "Who's there?" Silence. She opened the door just a crack, even though we begged her not to. No one was there, just the empty porch and the woods beyond it. We shut the door again and slid the lock into place. None of us spoke for a long time. That night, we tried to stick together. We dragged our blankets into the living room and all slept near the fireplace. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of movement. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid of what I might see. Across the room, by the farthest window, was a silhouette. Tall, thin, perfectly still. I thought it was one of my friends, until I noticed Nate and Emily curled up on the floor next to me. Claire was snoring softly. I blinked, and in that split second, the figure was gone. The next morning, we decided to leave. But when we packed our bags and headed for the car, we saw something that made our blood run cold. On the hood of the car, drawn into the dust, were words. "You can't leave." We stared at it, horrified. None of us had written it. We hadn't even touched the car since we arrived. We piled in and drove off fast, down the dirt road and back toward civilization. But as we passed the tree line, I looked back at the cabin one last time. In the upstairs window, I swear I saw someone standing there, watching us leave. Claire told me later that her parents had rented that cabin out before, but some people always left early. A few even demanded refunds, saying the place was unsafe. No one ever gave details, but we never went back. And even now, when I think about those words scrawled into the dust of the car, I wonder if we hadn't left when we did, what would have happened to us? Okay, outro. That wraps up tonight's video on 4 scary true summer cabin horror stories you want to forget. Cabins are supposed to be a retreat, a place to relax and disconnect. But as these stories prove, Sometimes isolation is the scariest thing of all. Which story scared you the most? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true horror stories. Sleep well. You can.